James Carson.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's the E stand for in the middle?
I didn't even give you that. Now you know.
No,
that
you
already.
didn't? No.
I sure
Better
did.
try it again.
Edward.
James Edward Carson.
And that was given to me in high school because they say you can't have, on a diploma, you got to have a middle name. So a teacher just assigned that middle name to me.
So your name really is James Carson, and they added that.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. Sure did. And that was one of the things they said, you got to have a middle name.
Wow. Well, tell us where you grew up. Where were you born?
I was born and grew up in Reynolds, Georgia, which is in middle Georgia. It was a farming town, population of about 3,000. Now it's probably down to 1,500 or so. And high school, grammar school, high school. And high school at that time was 11th grade.
Wow. What did your parents do?
Grew up with grandparents. And my grandfather was a carpenter, master carpenter. He had a 5th grade education, but he could do carpentry, read blueprints and all that. So, and during that time, he was never out of work, either close to home or away from home. And sometimes he'd be gone 3 or 4 weeks, and he'd come back, but he always had work. And it was a cotton town, and then there were peaches, Middle Georgia and Fort Valley, Georgia is the peach center of the world. And I used to work in those, during when we were out of school. Didn't have too much to do with the cotton though. I didn't want to do that. So as I grew older and got into junior high school, I was downtown one day. Went to the post office. We had a post office. I rode my bike downtown to get the mail, and this man was working on this store. He was inside, just building cabinets and all that stuff. So I walked in there. I said, "You need any help?" He said, "Well, yeah, I need some help." And from there, I started to work for him, and I worked there through high school. So that took me from going to the cotton fields picking cotton, and I worked in a 5 and dime store. And when I got ready to go to college, my sister was already in college. And so he said to me, "Are you going to go to college?" I said, "Yep, I think so." He said, "You got enough money?" I said, "Well, I don't know." So he said, "Well, let me know." And but anyway, I didn't need to get any money for him to go to college. My parents paid for that. So then I was off to Fort Valley State College.
Now, let's talk about high school for a second.
Yeah.
You told me something very interesting, and that is that first of all, you had a very small high school class. How many did you tell me were in there?
19, I believe.
19.
Yeah.
And in those days, or at that time, in this location, instead of 12 grades that most people would experience, you actually graduated at the end of the 11th grade.
Exactly.
But that changed.
It changed. It was changing the next year. So they asked our class. They had 12th grade coming next year. If you want to stay on and go through 12th grade, but you can go ahead and graduate with 11th grade, and you're fine. But if you want to stay for the 12th grade, you can.
So up until that time, what year did you graduate from high school?
1950.
So in 1950,
right.
There were 11 grades. Mm-hmm. At the end of 11 grades, you had a high school diploma.
Right.
And you could go on to college.
Go on to college, yes.
And in 1951, it started, at least in Georgia,
right.
It started 12 grades.
Grade. Exactly.
Wow. So
I put in I was 16, stayed in college for about 2.5 years, and wasn't doing that well, and decided.
And where did you go to college?
Fort Valley State College.
Okay, Fort Valley State College.
And it's now a university, yeah.
Okay, and that's in Fort Valley, Georgia. How far was that from where you grew up?
13 miles.
So, very close.
Yeah. Well, it was close.
And what did you study?
Well, in the beginning, I wanted to be a PE teacher. I wanted to coach, so that's where I started out.
Were you an athlete in school?
Yeah, I played basketball and track. We didn't have a football team because school wasn't that large. We just had basketball and track.
Yeah, with only 19 people in your class,
yeah.
you'd have to have almost everyone.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, so you were an athlete, and you wanted to pursue a degree or a career in athletics of some type.
Right.
So
and I ended up going in Fort Valley and going to major in physical ed. And my best friend in high school was going to major in agriculture. We went to school at the same time. And one day he told me, he said, "Listen, you need to change your major." I said, "Why?" He said, "Do you realize that the second highest paid person in the school system is the agriculture teacher?" I said, no, I didn't know that. He said, that's right. That's the second highest. Third highest is the home economics teacher. Yep.
Wow.
So I thought about that overnight, and I changed my major.
What was your friend's name?
His name was Willie James Bentley. He's the one that whose father owned the funeral home.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he never finished college.
Well, the other thing, I want to go back for just a minute, is your given name at birth was James Carson,
right.
but you had an addition to that when you graduated from high school. Tell us that story.
Well, you know, I guess the person in charge of the commencement said,
in high school.
In high school, everybody has to have a middle name. On a diploma, you got to have a middle name. If you don't have one will be assigned to you. And I mean, so they said, well, how about Edwards? I said, that's fine with me. I don't care. And that was it. And that has followed me to this day. So, you know, my mom and my grandmother, they didn't say, well, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. You know, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change your age or anything. So that's all right. So that's how Edward got into my.
That's a great story. Let's go back to Fort Valley State College. Yeah. So your friend convinced you that because the economic opportunity was there, you would change your major. And in fact, you got a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture education.
Exactly.
How many years did it take to do that?
Well, I did in two segments because I left school and went in the Army.
Okay.
And I spent 2 years in the Army. And I came out of the Army, got home. My mother says, all right, it's time you're going to go back to school. Nope. See, I was grown up now, you know, so no, I'm not going back to school. Had a good friend in the service with me from New Jersey. And I called him and I said, hey, I'm coming that way. So I caught the train. I went to New Jersey. And I stayed there 5 years. And had a good job. I mean, working on an assembly line, building electric motors, making a good salary. And I just come to me one day and says, hey, you know, I could be right here for the next 30 years doing this right here now, and then I won't be doing anything else. So I called my mom. I said, I'm coming back home, I'm going to school. And so I said, but I'm going to have to get the GI Bill in order to do this. And at that time, the GI Bill was waning out. I mean, you know, it was coming to the end. So I went downtown, a little town, and talked to the postmaster, who had all the knowledge about government stuff and all that, right? So she called a person in Atlanta, and so I got my cousin and I went to Atlanta to the VA office in Atlanta, and talked to them about getting the GI Bill, going back to college. Nope, didn't have anything. So I drove back home. I told my mom, I said, well, I'm going back to New Jersey because I can't get the GI Bill, and you guys don't have enough money. You got enough money for me to go to school, but I got to help spend the money. I got to have some money in my pocket to do things with. So grandmother said, well, I tell you what, you go back to school, your mom will pay your tuition, and I'll give you spending money. Wow. And so I said, okay, fine, that's a good deal. So I stayed and went back. And I made the honor roll every quarter. Wow. After I got back. What I had, my mind was set. I know what I wanted to do. And so I did that, and then I finished up, and there were 2 jobs available in the state at that time, 2. And when I graduated, because I graduated in the middle of the year, and I had a choice of either one of those jobs, so I interviewed for both of them. And then I took the one where they grow tobacco in the state. And I didn't know one thing about tobacco. In fact, they didn't teach us much about tobacco in college. It was all cotton, peanuts, corn. And so I ended up going to a small town in Georgia, South Georgia.
So where did you graduate from college from?
Fort Valley State.
So you graduated from Fort Valley State, and then you went right to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I worked 4 years in high school. And then decided that I needed to go and get another degree.
Okay, that's the part where
Okay. And I went back to Fort Valley, talked to a professor, told him I wanted to go to school and get a master's. And he said, okay. And he said, talk to me next week. So the next week I called him, he said, well, got you an assistantship at Tuskegee.
Wow.
In Alabama. So I was at the time married now, I got 2 kids. So we packed up. My wife had a degree in education as well, so she had a teacher's license. So we moved to Columbus, Georgia, which is 45 miles from Tuskegee. And my sister was working in the school system in Columbus, Georgia. So my wife got a job. And I went to Tuskegee to school, and she stayed in Columbus, and I would come home on weekends.
Now, I did not realize those two cities were that close together.
Yeah, it's close, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Phoenix City, if you cross the river, you're in Phoenix City, Alabama, which is which separates the Georgia from Alabama. And I was there for a year and a half, got a master's. And during that time, I had a couple of professors tell me, you need to go on to school, you need to go and get a PhD. You know. So well, I hadn't thought about doing that, you know. So I said, well, why not? So then I took a job with Tuskegee, and that job was actually following up on some people that had been trained in vocational education. They were doing bricklaying, carpentry, electrical work, and that kind of thing. So they were scattered out all over the country because the Labor Department paid for the training. So they said, well, we need to find out now after 2.5 years these guys have been out there. Let's see what they're doing. So I was put on a team of about 5 people, and we scattered out across the United States trying to locate these folks. First, we got to locate the parents, relatives, to let us know, when the last time you heard from them, where were they when you heard from them. So I had New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana. Those were the places I had to go to locate some folks. And during that process, a professor at Tuskegee said, I want you to go by Ohio State University and talk to this guy. His name was Bill Dowling. So I made an appointment to see him because I was in Cleveland and I was in Cincinnati. And I flew into Cincinnati and I drove to Columbus and had the interview with the professor that actually ended up being my major professor in college. And went there and we talked, and he says, how much time you got? I said, how much time do I need? He said, well, you need about 3 years. I said, I can't stay here 3 years. He said, well, what are you gonna do? I said, well, I don't do it in 2. He said, well, if you can do it in 2, sir, but you're gonna have to work. I said, no, I don't care about that. So I was out of there in 2 years.
So you got a PhD in 2 years.
Right.
From Ohio State University.
Right.
And your degree was your PhD is in?
Adult education.
In adult education.
Right.
So what did you do then?
Well,
and for reference,
yeah.
This was 1970.
1970.
So let's stop for 1 minute.
Yeah.
1970. May 4th, 1970 was the what's become very infamous shooting at Kent State University. What was going on college campuses at that time in 1970? There was a lot of unrest.
Yeah, there was a lot of turmoil. I mean, the undergrad people, when I say undergrad people, I mean undergrad students, pretty much they weren't going to class. But graduate students were. And because, they had a different motivation about college than the younger folk.
So the undergrads, they were protesting.
Yeah, pretty much. Now you had some few graduate students that I knew was involved in protests. But for the most part, it was undergrad students. Because they just stopped going to class. I mean, they shut the university down, And it was just a lot of turmoil. I mean, it was scary.
Well, you were telling me one day a large number of students, I think you gave a number, had blocked streets. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, one of the things that the aim was for them to shut everything down. I mean, traffic, everything. So High Street in Columbus, Ohio runs across the whole of Columbus, the city of Columbus, and almost right through the middle of the campus. And they just, I don't know, 7,000 to 8,000 students, maybe more than that, sat in the street and blocked the traffic.
7,000 or 8,000 students sat in the street.
In the middle of the street.
And blocked traffic.
Both ways.
To protest.
Yes.
The war.
Yes.
Wow.
And that lasted for maybe half day. The police didn't know what to do. I mean, because they got something on their hands they never seen before. All that, students trying to shut down things like that. And so that lasted maybe half a day. And then shortly after that, the president said, we're going to shut the campus down. And the National Guard came in. And this was after the shooting, I guess it was. Yeah, this was after. And the National Guard came in and across the campus, and everybody had to go. And I was worried because, it was shutting the place down, and I want to get out of here.
You're trying to complete your PhD.
Yes. And I had taken all my classes, and I was just doing my research and getting that done.
Wow.
At that time, so. But as it turned out, nothing really catastrophic happened on the campus.
Not at Ohio State.
Right.
And this was happening on campuses all over the country. Right. But it just happened to be that you were, 80, 90 miles from Kent State, where this horrible tragedy took place and students were shot. Yeah. And of course, the song Ohio came out and kind of became a calling card for that whole movement. But you were a graduate student trying to complete your PhD.
Yes.
And gosh.
Now you did the song you're talking about?
Yeah.
I went on to Tennessee, to Nashville, and I worked at Tennessee State for a year, and this demonstration stuff was still going on. And there were some students from Middle Tennessee State University who were doing student teaching in Nashville. And I was in charge of student teachers at this high school. And I taught graduate classes on campus. And this young man played a guitar, and his buddy. And they had a big strike at this school where I was doing supervising student teachers, and they were singing that song by Kent State.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sure. And it was it's kind of nerve-wracking, And I talked to these two guys, because they're the ones that caused the high school students to walk out.
Yeah.
And I called them to the side and we talked. And I told them, I said, look, I know where you are, I know what you're trying to do. I said, but some of these kids don't understand what's going on. So you shouldn't do this. And I told them, I said, now, I gotta grade you. When you leave here, I gotta grade you. And I said, I don't want to give you a bad grade because of some of the stuff you're doing. You need to cut it out. So they did. They cut it out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, after you got your PhD from Ohio State, as you mentioned, you went to Tennessee State University, and
but Mike, I had 3 job offers. One was Tennessee State, one was Western Kentucky, and what other school? I've forgotten the other school, but anyway, I went to Tennessee State because I knew the president there.
Oh.
Because he was at Tuskegee when I was in grad school. So I knew him.
Interesting.
Well, but the thing about it though, see, I was put down a holding pattern. He really didn't have the job that I thought I was going to get at Tennessee State. And so they had funding to supervise student teachers in the city schools in Nashville. So they had professors from the university supervising those students. So I got that one of those jobs. But at the time, I didn't know that I was only going to be there for a year. As a matter of fact, I bought a house. And we were there close to a year, and then a person from Tuskegee drove up from Alabama up there to see me one night. And came to my house, and we sat down. I knew him now, because he was at Tuskegee when I left. He was one of the professors there. And he done mapped out a plan that he wanted me to be involved in this plan. And he said, he handed me a piece of paper and said, write your salary on there. Now I said, you kidding? He said, no. He said, now, but be reasonable, So I said, okay, and I did. He said, okay, that's what you got. But now I didn't know, though, at the time, that in order for me to get that salary, I got to write proposals and funding grants to get that money. But I did for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I did for 7 years. So, but it really ticked me off when I found out that I was just put down a holding pattern until they got some money to get me to come to Tuskegee.
So you went back to Tuskegee?
I went back to Tuskegee.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I worked, I was there for 7 years now.
Wow. So what happened after Tuskegee? 7 years at Tuskegee. Where did you go next?
Fayetteville State.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you came back. You came back home, I guess, Fayetteville State, where you are now. Where your station is. You're in Fayetteville.
Well, that's my first time coming here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't even know if Fayetteville State existed.
Is that right?
I never saw them anywhere at any conferences or so when I did see the announcement in the Chronicle of Higher Education, I said, this is something I want to do. So I applied for it. And the reason I applied for it because Kellogg Foundation had funded them a bunch of money. And I knew the people at Kellogg. And I said, oh, okay. So I called the guy at Kellogg. And I told him, I said, they got a job in continuing ed at Fayetteville State. He said, why don't you go take it? We'll help you.
Wow.
And so I came up, interviewed for the job, and I got it. And at that time, Kellogg built the Continuing Education Center on this campus here at Fayetteville State. That's the second time that Kellogg had bricks and mortar on the campus. The other one's at Maryland, University of Maryland. So they funded the program for 4 years. I came in and had 2 years left on the grant. And then they want to renew it. And the chancellor and some other guy who was the provost and vice chancellor for academic affairs, they got together, put the proposal together. And then they showed it to me. Now, they talking about getting more money for a unit that I was supervising. And I had nothing to do with the writing of it. So they called Kellogg and said they were coming up for a visit and bringing a proposal and all that. So the guy from Kellogg called me. He said, I don't see your name on the list, you're not coming. I said, no. He said, what do you mean you're not coming? You running continuing ed and you're not coming? I said, no, I just work here. So I told them when they showed me the proposal, you're not gonna get any funding for this. What do you mean? I said, they're not gonna fund this. I've been dealing with Kellogg for 7 years. I know they're not gonna fund this. Well, we're gonna take it in the budget. Okay, fine, go ahead. They didn't get the money, not a dime. And the program ended at the end of 2 years. So then I became an assistant to the chancellor.
At Fayetteville State University.
Yeah. And then moved on up to development from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
You had a great career in education.
Well,
you went to school at some of the names that when they're mentioned, you kind of hear the holy choir sing, very, very revered educational institutions. You came up in a very interesting time.
It was.
When the country was in turmoil with the Vietnam War and things, and saw firsthand what happened. Why in the world did you decide you wanted to get in the broadcasting business?
Well, when I became the assistant to the chancellor, the radio station, they had a 10-watt radio station.
Campus radio station, and that was very common.
10 watts.
Colleges, different places, they would get a very low power that just kind of covered the campus.
That's
so
right.
they could play music for the campus.
Exactly. And so when the university decided they want to go after the 100,000 watts, so they came out with the 80 or 90 docket, whatever they call that. And so they applied for it because they could fall into that category of 88.1 to 91.9.
There was a place.
Yeah. So we applied for it, and of course we got it. And it took a while, because we're talking about 100,000 watts. And the transmitter was on one side of the railroad track. The studio was on the other, okay? So what the deal was, we needed to tunnel on the railroad track with cabling.
To write your signal?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Took us 6 months for the railroad to prove that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it was just, it was crazy. But anyway, so the attorney we had in Washington, doing all the attorney work for us, he called me in 1987 and said, look, there are some channels available, one's in Hope Mills. Why don't you apply for it?
You personally?
Yeah. Why don't you apply for it? He said, as a matter of fact, you probably can get it. He said, because there's a minority preference here, and if you stay with it, you'll get it. As long as you're clean and all that, you'll get it.
So there's a channel, but I want to go back and I want you to tell us one other story that I thought was really interesting about a radio show, and this goes back to your friend in high school. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that radio show and how you kind of, as you said, got bit by the bug. What was your first experience in radio, and how did that tie back to your friend in high school?
Well, because they had this funeral home,
and when was it? Was this when you were in high school?
No, this was in college.
In college.
I was in college. Yeah.
Okay, and he was there. Okay, yeah. So go ahead.
And so I told his father. I said, look, they have these Sunday morning programs. So why don't we do one?
So you talked to the funeral director about having a 15-minute radio show about the funeral home. Right. What was the program about?
Well, it was about funerals that we would hold that week, the previous week, or the week coming up, the people that we got, to bury.
And you had music?
Yeah, we had music. We had choirs come in, and we had them singing.
Wow.
So what we would do would give information on the funeral, where it's going to be, what time it's going to be, and that kind of thing. Church, where it's going to be located, where the burial was going to be. So that was the information that was being passed out.
And you kind of produced all this, and were in the middle of it.
Exactly.
Wow.
And we would we'd get together on Saturday and put the whole program together, and then go through it. And then because I tried to get the son to do it, let him do it, but he wouldn't do it.
And what station did this air on?
WFPM.
And where was that?
That's in Fort Valley.
In Fort Valley, WFPM.
Yeah, world's finest peach market. Yeah.
That's what the call letter stood for? Yeah. And do you remember what did it cost to buy 15 minutes airtime?
Oh, to me we were paying like $25 or something.
Yeah, that was a lot at that time, wasn't it?
$25.
Yeah.
And then the guy was at the door when you came in and take your money.
So you paid your money before you did your show.
Yeah, you couldn't do your show and run no pay, so you had to pay before you went on the air.
Well, they always say in the funeral business that's kind of how that worked too. You had to pay before they bury you. Yeah. So maybe that was kind of a common thing.
And they had 2 studios, and they'd have somebody in another studio going with that program, and then you'd be setting up in the other side. So that's what,
So then while you were doing your show, the next show could, and Sunday morning they had a lot of different programs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the parking lot was filled, on Sunday morning. And it was pretty much all black.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Pretty much all black folk.
Well, that sounds like a very interesting show. What time in the morning was that on Sunday? Do you remember?
Sunday morning, we were on at 8 o'clock.
Wow.
Yeah, it was at 8 o'clock.
Wow.
But we were 13 miles away, so it wasn't a big deal to get there.